whether it's approaching things differently, whether it's, and typically that's being the first at doing something and not seeing a role model, not seeing someone that looks like you, just kind of doing it. And so that's where I'm comfortable, but it's also just scary, right? Like it's almost like you're going into a new path with no light.
Hey everyone, this is Mike Ma. I am the host of Alone Together. I'm also sometimes the managing partner of Sidecut Ventures, and I'm so excited to bring you another episode. The point of this podcast, Alone Together, is to talk about the plight of a solo GP. And I am so excited to have Samara Hernandez from Chingona Ventures on. Not only are we a co-investor, I'm a very small investor in some of the deals we've done together. But most importantly, when I get asked the question by LPs, who do you look up to? Who do you want to be as a solo GP? The first word I was like, Samara Hernandez, Chingona Ventures. I mean, is this even a question? And so the way that you've just been such an inspiration to me, I'm honored to have you, to be on the same cap table with you. I'm honored that you actually taken the time to talk with me. And I'm going to try not to fanboy out too hard during the course of our time. So thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
For sure. I mean, so, you're really out there on so many outlets, but I mean, I'll ask you the same question I ask founders is like, why did you choose to do this? Because this is a very hard way to make an easy living. So yes. It can't be that. I would just love to tell however you'd like to do it, like how you feel like you got to become a solo GP and walk us through the story of your life and how it led to this particular outcome and moment.
Well, look, I certainly didn't ever think I was going to go in venture. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know what venture capital was growing up. When I got into finance, right out of college, I had no idea what venture capital was. I worked at a great bank and I had great experience early on. It wasn't until I got to business school where I saw this new kind of way of investing in early stage companies that maybe had a name, might have a product, but they were just changing the world. And you got to be a tiny part in that. And I was just fascinated by it. And so I was grateful that was able to join venture capital after I graduated from business school. But at the time, jobs weren't posted, certainly not in Chicago. There's very limited firms. And it was hard I didn't know how hard it was to get a job in venture capital back then. I think that's been kind of consistent throughout my life is that I just don't know how hard it is. So I just do it, right? It's probably being naive, but if I knew how hard it was, it would probably, get in my head and not allow me to do something. But I always, throughout my whole professional career, whenever I saw an opportunity, I always said, all right, this needs to exist in the world. I don't know the solution. I don't know how I'm going to fix it. I don't know what I'm going to do exactly, but I know that there is this problem that needs to get solved. And then you work towards figuring that out. And so when I got into venture capital, I fell in love with early stage investing, loved working with founders. I loved investing. I was grateful that I got to work under, great mentors that helped me develop my investor style and acumen and all that. But there was over 5 years, I had seen the deals being done in the industry. I had seen the types of founders, the types of industries. And I just thought, there's not anything here for super early stage, certainly not in the Midwest, pre-seed. I mean, there was a lot outside of mostly in the Valley, but a lot less in Chicago in particular and outside. And it was mostly filled with small angel checks. And Chicago was still building out their angel network.
Yep.
We're known for being more risk averse here. But there was really good business here. There's a lot of stuff that is great here, like building good businesses, build good business fundamentals that are typically capital efficient. The valuations are reasonable. And so I thought, okay, well, there's something here and there's an opportunity to go in earlier, especially in ecosystems that didn't have mature angel networks. 2, there's an opportunity in the market where industries are changing, consumer demographics are changing, and VC was slow to fund. And then 3, there's founders that didn't fit the traditional mold in terms of founder background, experience, and geography. And we believe that great can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, well, that, this needs to exist. I didn't know that I was going to be able to raise my funds. I actually started off wanting to create an angel group just to prove out the deal flow. I met my anchor LP who anchored my first fund and then has continued to invest throughout. And so that's how we got started with Chingona Ventures.
You talked about your professional life, and there's so many things you said that I resonate with. Just seeding needs to be done, problems that need to get solved, needs to exist in the world. And you said the words professional life. Can you share a little bit about your personal life before? Yeah, can you let us know this? Are there things that happen in your childhood, growing up, household, that you can kind of draw a line between this? Like, when I hear you talk, I hear this like, it just needs to be done, right? It just, and this drive towards activity. And are there things or things you can share in your childhood, your personal life that kind of pull those two threads together?
Yeah, it's interesting because there is definitely a type of personality that it takes to step outside of your comfort zone of a corporate job with a steady paycheck, with a good paycheck, with a name brand, and go and start and do your own thing.
Yeah.
Where you're not going to get paid for a while.
Actually, the
get a lot of
opposite.
no's.
Actually, the
Right,
opposite.
complete opposite.
I'm
Yeah.
like paying like right now.
Right. No, yes, exactly. Exactly. You have, and there's a lot of risk. And if growing, I mean, people that typically do that are in a position where they have the means, their family has the means, they know and have a good network. And it's really hard for those that are in debt, where they know they have to take care of their parents, where they don't have, they don't come from a network that can do early checks. And so I don't, growing up, I mean, it was like low income, below the poverty line, all the things, right? And so for me to get ahead, it was the education piece that I knew. I knew there was no cushion. I knew there was no anybody taking care of me. I needed to take care of everyone else. And so my early focus was just to get a good job. But the thing is that when you're different and when you've had to do things differently to be at the same level, you kind of get used to that, right? Like, for instance, uh, so early on, I was good at math, not knowing that I was good at math. My sister would come home and teach me whatever she learned in math. She was 3 years older than me. And I was in ESL, English as a second language, until fifth grade. And so I was behind in English and reading and writing. But math just came kind of easier to me. And, then I was able to get ahead and all the things. But I didn't know that I was good at it. It wasn't until a teacher approached me and gave me extra work and put me in these different classes and had me take different tests. And, I've just had to, in the early part of my career, just take a different path to get to the same level as a lot of other people, whether it's working a lot harder, whether it's approaching things differently, whether it's, and typically that's being the first at doing something and not seeing a role model, not seeing someone that looks like you just kind of doing it. And so that's where I'm comfortable, but it's also just scary, right? Like it's almost like you're going into a new path with no lights, completely dark, no one's there, and you kind of have to figure out your own path. Now, I will say that I've had incredible mentors in my life, incredible people that have given me a few lights along the way and given me, put me in certain positions, which I'm always grateful for. But so how I draw that into my professional life is that I know it's going to work. I just need to figure out the right path that I need to create to get there. And even if there is a path, usually that's not the path I'm going to go down because it's just not going to work for me, especially in venture capital, right?
Right.
Because you have a lot of the traditional investors, traditional things happening. And so in order to make a dent in the universe, you just have to do something different. And you have to have the courage to do that. And the courage that I have is from my family. They have sacrificed a lot to get us to this point. They have the real courage, right? They're the ones that sacrificed a lot to get me and my sisters to where we are today. And so I take on that courage and I look to them. They took the real risk. For me, this is minimal compared to what they did. And so I think there's those parallels. But the last thing I would say is like, I always say, I've never been the smartest. I've never been the one with the best grades and the best whatever scores, but I've been able to outwork people. And, the thing for me is that I realize it's not who gets the highest grades. It's not who gets the highest test scores or gets the best degree. It definitely opens up doors and networks and all the things, but it's who has the grit and who has the drive. And I've had to have that in my life, whether I liked it or not, to get to certain places. And that continues on now in my professional career.
It's always amazing to me, and I'm like getting hyped, like sitting in my chair listening to you. You're so strong, and that story is so powerful. And I'm sorry to be a fatalist, because I too am like a Midwesterner, and I'm like, oh, it can't be that great. How do you keep it up? Or let me ask a different question. You're so like, do you ever go to low points in that journey? And what do you do? What did those feel like for someone who names their firm Chingona? And I don't know, for the Spanish speakers out there, what Chingona, if they know what Chingona means. Do you care to say?
Sure. So Chingona means badass woman.
Yeah.
And it's in Mexican Spanish.
Yeah.
It's a nod to my Mexican heritage. It's, what we're trying to build. It's the founders, that we're backing, that are badass founders of all different backgrounds. It's, for me, and it was intentional. It was because whenever I do get imposter syndrome, which is all the time, being able to say, okay, you have this name of this fund, and you got to, you're allowed yourself a few days that are off, and you got to get back on it. But yes, I mean, low points all the time. And
yeah. How do you, how do you manage it? Cause like I'll share a story at my kitchen table. My wife's a doctor. She has nothing to do with this. I literally had my head in the middle of this fundraise down on our kitchen table like this. I'm like, I don't know why. And I looked at her, I was like, why can't I just have a normal job, like a normal person? And she puts her hand on my shoulder and she says, honey, you chose this. And those, and kidding aside, like those moments are really low. And as a solo GP, like I don't know, I went pretty dark. It was pretty low, and I'm not out of it. I'm at baby first close. I don't know. Do you have moments like this? And I would love to, you like recount like what that felt like and what that was? And now, you're
all the time.
You're fun too, massive, being like one of the largest. Are you the largest solo GP that I mean, you're definitely the largest one that I know.
Latina, yeah, but no. Charles Hudson.
That's right. Charles has
opened the doors for us, which you should have in his podcast. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
For me, I've first of all, yes, and I think we don't talk about mental health enough. Certainly not in certain communities. So yes, I think that's something we should absolutely talk about. The challenge with being a solo GP is also that you're by yourself, and you don't have necessarily a partner to go along the journey with you, and that there's pros and cons to that. But I'm never by myself. Like, I have developed 10 years in the industry of investor friends and colleagues, and frankly, this past week was a low point, and I had a really good friend that I spoke to yesterday who's also a solo GP. He's 3 or 4 funds ahead of me, or 2 funds ahead of me, and I kind of mentioned this, and he's like, yeah, this is it, and this is why. And he made me feel like I wasn't alone. And when you get to a certain point, so people think they see you out there, or what you raised, or what you invested in, or what list you're on, especially in VC, because there's a lot of that. People think you are a certain way, or that you've made it, or whatever else. What many don't realize is that no, that this is a long-term game. Venture capital, it takes a long time to get returns, especially if you're going super early, like pre-seed. And you have to just keep staying in the game and keep investing. And you need to figure out how to continue to fundraise when you don't have the distributions yet. Continue to fundraise when you don't have the markups because of, Series A was shut down for a while. And so, one, I look to my friends and network in my community. And 2 is I always think like, okay, well, this is the universe kind of telling me to slow down. And I'm used to go, go, go. And when you're just focused on fundraising, I don't have this, you get an anxiety, you have that. It's like, okay, let me just pause. What can I control? So I can control what I do in the morning that I know gets me going. I meditate for the first 5 minutes when I wake up. I do my little workout, whatever little workout it is. It's nothing intense. And then I just get moving. And that's the thing for me. It's just like, what are the little things that you can control? Even if you're having a rough day, you've gotten, 100 no's from LPs, you founder won't take your capital, all the things, your business went out, a startup went out of business, just focusing on, okay, what can I control today? What are the things that I know give me, get my day going, make me feel really good? And then focusing on that. And sometimes it's literally just taking a step back, getting outside of this bubble and focusing on the other things like family and kids. And they're not always de-stressing me, but at the minimum, it's showing me like that there's other things in life that are more important. And then once you do that, it's hard for me to relax. I will be frank about that.
Yeah.
But when you do that, it helps you step away, become more productive. Because when you do that, it helps you become more creative. It helps you tell your story differently. Because if you're telling your story the same way, it's not getting to people. Please, you got to think about it differently. And so when I've stepped back and been like, I give myself a day, I give myself a few hours, it allows me to be a lot more creative. It's like, you know what? That's not really resonating. What am I not saying? What am I not talking about that is making it seem like the portfolio is this way versus something else? And so focusing on what I can control, making sure that I do the things that make me feel good, even the small things in the morning when I wake up. And then also taking a step back and saying, okay, let's reset. Let's get a different, get in a different mind game and become more creative.
I love that. I feel like that's completely directed right at me, just to tell you how sad my life is. I had to schedule and send my wife a calendar invite for a lunch between 11:30 and 1 today. And one of the comments was, you need time to do nothing.
Yeah.
And I just said, I can't. I absolutely can't. I had to schedule, and I'm still working through that myself. Through a lot of, and yes, I think we need to talk about therapy. I actually found my therapist in a WhatsApp VC group. I just said, hey, I need a therapist. No, I'm not asking for a friend. And it's been game changing for me, but it's not easy to let yourself do that. And it's great to hear how it's restorative for you. It's been hard. It's been hard.
It has been, and I realized that there were things that I would do to just cover up whatever I was feeling. So overworking out, focusing on self-improvement, right? I mean, like type A personalities are just go, go, go. And that only works for a certain while. It might work for 20 years. It might work 30 years, might work for a couple of weeks. But if you don't relax, your body's going to force you to relax at some point. And so I think it's important to, even if self-care is like for an hour, just sitting and doing nothing, which is very uncomfortable, but maybe it's starting with 10 minutes at first.
I'll try and work up to it. I want to talk about a little bit, if I could tuck into this whole idea of how you present yourself as a solo GP to the LP network. And I'll start with a joke, but how close have you been to ever getting hit by a bus? And then I would love to ask, and then the second follow-up, and I'll let you answer the first one, is like, how do you think people should respond to I'll just be kind of the shade or the negative thoughts that a lot of LPs have on solo GPs?
I think when I credit this, again, I'll mention Charles, but I'll credit this to people like him and others that opened the doors for many of us, because it's a lot more accepted now than it was back then, but it's still something that people see as a big risk. And early on, when LPs would ask, it was just like, I said, well, maybe we'll hire someone and that's what this person might look like. And I might be, I started talking to some people, and then people just started focusing on this fictional person that I had that maybe would get hired, maybe not. And then I got great advice. It was like, just stop that. That's not what it is today, right? Today, it is a solo GP fund. And this is exactly why it makes sense for the stage, for what we're doing. And there's different types of solo GPs. There's literally GPs that have a computer and themselves. And then there's some that are building a firm that have a whole team. They have venture partners, they have advisors, they have junior people. And so it's just owning what you are and why it makes sense. And it takes a while to do that. And it's not like I have any swagger by any means, but once I just owned it, once I was just like, this is what it is. And when an LP would ask, I would say, I'm a solo GP. This is what it is. This is why it makes sense. And then I would get either a quick no, which is great for me because then you don't have to, spend your time and you can just get to the next person, or a quick, okay, let's move on to the next thing. So that's one thing, is that I got, you get comfortable with just owning it. And there are people that will invest in solo GPs and why it makes sense. And then the next thing I'll say is like, yes, to your point, how many solo GPs have actually gotten hit by a bus? And how many, on the other flip side, how many partnerships have broken up, especially in the last year, right? And that, I mean, every single LP that you talk to, there's been somebody in their portfolio that had a partnership breakup. And so I say, like, look, you're getting, this is me, this is what you're getting, right? And if I leave, that's it. But with partnerships, you have to figure out if they're going to work together. There's the risk of somebody leaving, right? And that's even higher than me leaving my own firm, or, me getting hit by a bus. And so for me, it was bringing that up as well. And then third, I think it was just showing them also whatever, actually not showing, but understanding the risk that they were trying to figure out. So if you really ask a lot of questions, it's like, oh, it's because they're trying to figure out how you make decisions, right? And so maybe they want to understand, do you just make decisions after 5 minutes? Or like, do you have a framework? Do you have some sort of guardrails that can help make you make better decisions? And so I was like, oh, well, I could talk through that. I have a whole thing. I have a whole process. I have or some were like focused on, oh, another thing with solo GPs. So I was in this meeting with an LP, and maybe this was music to my ears, but whatever, I reference it. They had invested in a ton of funds, solo GPs and multi, GP firms. And he said, when you're an LP and you're investing in a fund that has multiple GPs, you're really investing in one rock star, right? And the rest is like, maybe. So if that rock star leaves, are you still going to be interested? There's really one that drives the returns. There's really one that has the majority of the economics. And I've seen those firms, and I've been a part of those, and there's so much politics with that.
Yeah.
It takes forever to get to a yes or no, right? Those really contradictory deals get hard to pass through because everyone's to approve. There's usually one person that's really dominating and bringing all the deals, and so I've seen that. I'm like, I don't need that right now. And there's partnerships that work really well. So I'm not trying to say that that's all of them. But just like there's risk with solo GPs, there's risk with multi-partners, right? Especially if they haven't worked together. And so once you kind of address those and trying to understand what they're really focused on and what's really concerning them, you address that head on. And then you can either get to a quick no, or let's move on to the next question.
Do you feel like you've ever changed someone's mind in that process? I mean, like, there's a real hard filter. One of my good friends is an LP, and when I said it was funny, she said, "You're dead to me," in a nice way. And that was clear. And now we don't talk about investing. We just talk about industry and see each other and hug each other at events. But have you been able to flip people through the course of the two funds? Have you actually evolved? Someone's like, I used to think not, and now I think I do because of you or something you've said.
Well, so first, I don't often try to go into a meeting trying to put people too far, right? So like, if they do no solo GPs, 200 million or above, right? Like, I don't know. There's only so much I can try to convince them. And I don't try to convince people out of, if they have a mindset, and we just move on. So I've never tried to do intentionally that. But when you hear something like, oh, we historically haven't done any solo GPs, or maybe we've only done one or two, okay, there's an exception, right? Or there's certainly LPs where I believe, I was just thinking about this, one of their first, if not the first solo GP in their portfolio. And they didn't directly talk to me about that or ask that. But what they did do is they did a lot of due diligence on my investments and how I make decisions. In one case, they wanted to be on my investment committee, and I just said no, right? You're either going to invest in me and believe that I'm going to make good decisions or not. There was what I get asked a ton is, am I how I manage my time. That's like it's like solo GP team and then like how you manage your time. And so I think one of the questions that you were going to ask at some point was like around what is this non-negotiable,
Yeah.
skill or whatever or advice that you need to, I would give the solo GP fundraising. And the one thing is just efficiency, being super efficient with your time. So for me, so I'm an industrial engineer by background. My whole life has a process. My professional life, my personal life. It drives my husband crazy. But there's a process for everything. I'm very structured, right? From like when I like to wake up to my schedule in the morning to what I like to eat for the day. Like everything has a process because it's just like wearing the same shirt, that the tech guys do every day. It's like you don't have to think about that. You can think about other things. My calendar is color coded. I audit it every week to make sure that I'm doing the things I should be doing. So when I'm fundraising, it should have all red because that's our LP meetings. When I'm not fundraising, it should be dark green and which is portfolio companies and orange because it's new deals. Right. And so for me, I've created a process for every single thing from when a deal comes through to how it filters through the process to how we report to LPs, to how we manage our portfolio. Everything as a process allows us to scale. And I also have a fantastic team now that I've built that there's very specific things and it's structured so that they know exactly what they need to do and the firm keeps moving. And so, you talk to as a solo GP, like you also have to you have to fundraise, manage the portfolio, you have to invest, you have to have a team manage the team, you got to do the HR, you got all the things. And so it's really important to be super efficient with your time to allow yourself to scale until you get a much bigger team. And so that is another question I get. So for me, it's like, it's not just the solo GP part for the sake of just solo GP. I really try to understand what about the solo GP are you most concerned with? Is it the productivity? Is it my time allocation? Is it that for sure you think I'm going to get hit by a bus? Is it that want me to have guardrails or other people that will help me think through investment decisions? And that's a tricky one because it's like either you believe in me or you don't. But gets people more comfortable with saying like, okay, there is a process, there is a framework. There are people in her network that she pulls information from. And so she can make better decisions, right? While I agree that I trust her decision making and believe in her, there's this other kind of community around her that helps make better decisions and helps her source more deals and all the things. So I think it's just really understanding what the question behind the question is, and then being able to address that head on.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, one of the things that I've always admired and frankly steal, and I'm trying to emulate, is that discipline and process. And I will say I'm nowhere near dialed on that. One of the things I admire most is as not only do you have a process, but it's public, right? You can go to the Chingona site and just download it. This is our process. This is our funnel. This is what we like. And it is, I'm copying a lot of it. One of the moves I've stolen from you to be protective of my time is everyone takes my intake form. Warm leads and cold leads all go through the same front door, so I can have Chad, my associate, manage that. And I think I'm giving myself like a C- at that process and discipline. That's something that I admire about you, not just, in terms of who you are, but also the discipline of that. But that's gone through an evolution. And I would love to talk about, and maybe the second half of this, like your evolution, both in terms of, let's start with investment process, because I remember I had your Google Doc bookmarked, and then it was like, oh, we have a new one. It's over here. So I use both of them. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's out there. Can you walk through like the evolution of that process in Gen 1 or was it Fund 1 and then this new one in Fund 2? And if anyone is out there and hasn't looked at it, they should. And props to you for putting that out there, not just for the founders who are pitching you, but also for aspiring GPs. I was like, ooh, I'm going to steal that. Can you walk through the evolution of that process? Because it's so good and so comprehensive. And also it's just so gosh darn nice too and friendly the way it's phrased and open. And the first one was great and the second one was even better. So Can you walk us through the evolution of that
Yeah.
process? And I would then I want to talk afterwards about your evolution of thesis if we have a little bit of time
Yeah.
on that.
Well, for me, for process, honestly, the first thing was like I had a $6 million fund, solo GP, and I had MBA interns that worked for me for class credit. Right? That's what I had. And so for me to allow me to process deals and to be more efficient, I, put that together. But also one of our values is transparency. And so this LP world certainly is a black box. The VC
Mm-hmm.
world, people don't often know like what you look for, and we're a little bit more transparent, but it's often a bad experience with a VC. I joke that it's a low bar to have a good experience with a VC, right? And
Yeah.
so their process isn't online. You need a warm intro. You get ghosted. Like you don't actually get good feedback. All the things. And so for us, it's like, okay, well, it's not. We're not doing rocket science here. It's just basically saying like, hey, this is what we look for. This is the questions we're going to ask you, and anybody can apply. And we've done investments out of cold inbound. A deal we
Yeah.
just did in November, we co-led an oversubscribed round into a deal that was a cold inbound. And so we are actually looking at every single deal that goes through. Two people, typically our analyst or associate and me, goes through every single deal that comes to the door. And it's also a way for founders not to waste their time, because the first few questions we're going to ask on there are going to tell you whether or not you're ready for, like, you fit even the first part of our thesis. So are you pre-seed? Have you raised under $1 million in outside funding? Are you, typically under a $10 pre-money valuation? Are you in these four sectors? If you're raising a series B, right? Like you're not a good fit. If you're in, somewhere outside the US, we just don't invest internationally right now. And so it, I don't want to waste founders' time either. And then even through our process, we get to a quick next step or no. We go back to founders within 5 to 7 business days on that. And it's very clear. If we have a next meeting with the founder, it's not just to figure out like, do we want to invest or not? I don't know how. It's very specific. We talk about it at every team meeting, and we say, all right, if we take a next meeting, what are the specific things we need to ask to get more comfortable with the deal? And if we can't get there, then we're just going to say no, right? Because it's not worth the founder's time as well. And we're very clear with them on it. And so we passed 99% of the time, just like any other VC.
Mm-hmm.
But we've had founders, mention to us, thank you for just being honest, for responding, for, letting us know throughout the entire process kind of where we are in the next step. And fundraising is hard. It's hard for a lot of people, most, non Ivy League, big tech, Silicon Valley founders. And for us, we are, looking to go within our network, but more importantly, outside of our network, because and reduce the bias in how we're looking at deals. But the way the process evolved is it just started off with me putting together just a quick notes on what I was doing anyway, because it was in my head, because I always have a
Yeah.
process to everything. And but with just like with any process that you create as an industrial engineer, it's not good unless you're continuously updating it, continuously improvement. Kaizen
Yep.
is the Six Sigma term. And so we're constantly looking at, and I always tell the new people or interns, like we have a process, but if it doesn't make sense anymore, if it's time consuming or making us do unnecessary work, then let's remove it. Let's take it out. Let's improve it. And so we often, when we did the process update, we said, okay, what is working? What are we still doing? What are we not doing? And so it's not like completely different,
Sure.
but there's some slight changes in there. We also, for us, it's learning. So every quarter we assess what deals came in the last quarter. What do we say yes to? What do we say no to? What are some trends we're seeing in terms of valuation sectors? For instance, last year we realized that supply chain was and supply chain tech was coming through the pipeline, and a lot of them went to second and third meetings, and that's not one of our core focus areas. We thought,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Okay, is there something here that we're liking? I mean, we're in the Midwest. I have my background in industrial engineering, right? I have
Chicago.
really good friends that are just focused on that. They can help us with due diligence. Is there something here that we should take another look at? And then we also look at, okay, companies that we passed on, did they go on to raise? Like we track them. Are they part of our anti-portfolio? And like, what are our learnings that we have? If there's companies that didn't work out well, what are the learnings there? And so we can continuously improve. It's kind of like training a model, but it's human. It's, can we continuously improve our process and decision-making process to become better investors. So I'm continuously improving our processes, and it drives me insane, absolutely insane, when there's like a meeting on the books that doesn't need to be a meeting, or there's a step or something that needs to get done that is just busy work. Like I never want to have that. And so I always say like, is this something we need to do? And if not, let's get out. Let's cut down the time in an entire process so that we can become more efficient.
Amazing. One more question on process because it involves people, which I think is so interesting. Before I want to get your take on your actually investing thesis. Maybe it is a move into supply chain or other dynamics you're seeing in the market. But how do you use people? Like, obviously as a solo GP and you have interns and I have, I have an associate, but how do you manage that dynamic and how do you take input in a way where, I mean, your name is on the door. I mean, Chingona is
Yeah.
that is you. When I think Chingona, I think Samara. Like, how do you
Yeah.
manage that? Especially people who are so junior and build voice for them. Because I don't think you have an IC like at other firms I've worked at where it needs to be consensus amongst the partners. Yet, Like, how do you incorporate feedback from different perspectives as a solo GP to come to a better outcome?
Yeah, so we have a senior analyst and a senior associate. So we do have two team members, and one of them is involved in more than post-investment support. One of them is involved in the pre-investment support. And the one that's involved in the pre-investment, she makes sure that all the deals go through the pipeline. She's aggressively sourcing because she's good at it and she's interested in it. She is the one that takes a lot of the first meetings with me, and then makes sure they go through the process and writing the memos and the one-pagers. And our other team member, she's involved in kind of when they come through the door, making sure she's really good at asking really in-depth questions and thinking really big picture and really unique, thoughtful insights. And so she goes into a lot of the due diligence, and then she handles our post-investment support. And for me, what was interesting, so I was a junior person at a former firm, and junior people aren't always, invited to do certain things or be on
Right.
the IC and whatever else. I was fortunate that I got a lot of flexibility, and I got to bring in deals and have a voice at the table while I wasn't formally, on the IC committee. And so I learned a lot from that. But also, for me, I learned that over the years, so I've been in venture capital now for 10 years, and there's things that haven't worked out well. There's industries I'm jaded by. And I'm also, I'm not super old, but I'm not super young either. And things have changed. And so I want to listen to Gen Z. I want to
Yeah.
listen to, what's the new technologies coming out there. I hadn't even used TikTok when I started the firm. And so people were, doing TikTok and I'm like, what is this thing? And so for me, it's really, really important, no matter how long I've been in the industry. I've seen people that have been in too long that are just so jaded and they're just so focused on what they know they can make money. And for me, I want to make sure to listen to all perspectives, whether you've been here for a year or, a few months, no matter your background, allowing individuals to do that and to bring in their unique perspectives really brings, for me, insightful things that I can incorporate in my decision-making process. Now, how the important thing too is like how you do that, because as the firm GP, you need to create an environment. As a boss, you need to create an environment for people to do that, and you need to understand how they work well, and then they need to understand how you work. And so one of the things that we also did is a few offsites. We took like a DISC test where we figured out how we work under stress and how we work in our normal environment. And what we ended up realizing is that I'm a D and a C, basically. Like I make quick decisions. I like the detail, but I don't want to hear the detail. I want you to know the detail and be ready for the questions, but I don't want to hear it. I want the TLDR and yes or no. And yeah. Whereas some other team members, which I love, are into the details and they want to dive in and like all the things. And so what I realized is that, okay, they realize that that's how I work, and I realize that that's how they work. And so in order for me to create an environment where I hear those perspectives, I needed to not talk first and say like, this is what I think. I needed to open up and say, what do you think first? Which I always do. I'm never the one that first, brings in my recommendation. And then also they know that I don't want to go on and on about the details. I want the TLDR, yes or no, and why. And then we can dive into questions. Right. And so it's a lot of learning. And I've heard so many GPs throughout my life. There was one where I had interviewed for a VC firm as a junior person, and they're like, look, I just want to make money. I don't want to mentor. I was like, okay, great. This isn't for me, but this is great. And so, and I appreciated his honesty because most GPs want to just make money. Like their core skill set is not necessarily mentoring and bringing people up and all the things that you're seeing with all this exodus from, different firms and launching their own firms. And sometimes they're, especially the bigger you are, you have management fees, you're comfortable, you don't want to take on additional risk. There's no incentive to do that and to bring in new perspectives or to do crazy deals. And as a junior person, you want that. You want to build that, bring in that deal that's going to,
Yeah,
stick your name in the ecosystem of you bringing in the next whatever, tech company
sure.
unicorn. And so when you're in an environment where you don't have that, as a talented person, there's only so much time you're going to stay there.
Yeah.
And so for me, I've had to learn over the years too how to obviously first and foremost launch my firm and train and invest and build my, you know, uh, investment acumen, but then also how to bring in people, no matter what age, to be able to bring in the next generation of
Yeah.
investors, listen to them, right? And funny story. My senior analyst, she comes from a sales desk that I worked at over 15 years ago, and she hit the ground running and was just hunting deals. She gets people that were early employees at like Bumble and all the things to respond to her on new tech companies that they're launching. She brought in her first deal this past summer in the travel space. I'm like, oh no, like that's not really our core focus, and I've invested in that, and I don't know if it's going to do well, blah blah. And she's like, well, there's this new way that Gen Z is traveling. Everything's posted on TikTok, just saving a bunch of stuff. And, there's now this new technology where it can better assess who you are. It could take your Instagram, your LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever pictures and say, okay, this is who you are, and be able to provide unique recommendations and all the things. And so there's these changes that have happened since I've made these investments, and they're targeting Gen Z as well. And so for me, it was opening up and listening to that perspective and being able to open up my thesis to kind of the new way that consumers are consuming content and then making decisions off of it.
I love that. I mean, I just with my associate Chad, we were doing deal review this week, and he was hemming and hawing. I want him to develop that. I was like, do you want this deal? Like, tell me why you want this deal, and then tell me why it's a risk, and then and then I want those two things to be your North Star in running this thing down. But I want it to start from like this because I want him to have a deal sheet and find the next unicorn. It's nice to hear that that's the culture that you're building. It's not we both want to make money, but it's really
Right.
cool to hear how you're building people up along the way and giving them voice for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
We're running short on time, and there's so much I want to talk about, but I need to respect your time because I know that I'm going to run out of my red allocation on your calendar here. I mean, we haven't talked into anything, but like, God, there's so much. Let me just do a couple quick things at the end about
Yeah.
things that I haven't hit. So we haven't talked about, in addition to your crazy life, like you had a baby during a fundraiser fund too. In addition to which so really like first like you have this structure. How did that
Yeah.
add even more pressure? How did you deal with that? I mean, because oh my God, how did you
Yeah.
do that?
So yeah, I mean, like, so my first fund, I ended up closing shortly after I had my first child.
I
And it was funny because I was fundraising and and I got pregnant. And then I was starting to get bigger and bigger. And I remember my girl, I was just getting nervous. I'm like, just close, just close. And I couldn't hide it anymore to the point where I was like so big that he wanted to meet. And I just remember just going in and saying, you know what? If they don't invest, they don't invest. Like, because back then it was like, I'm a solo GP. There's already a lot of stuff to that. I don't know if they're going to think that I'm going to have a baby and quit or I can't manage it, or I don't know what I thought, but
Ugh.
there's, and so anyways, I did that and he goes, oh, okay, congratulations. Let's talk deal terms. I'm like, oh, okay. Like it was completely like not anything big. And I always appreciated this LP because it just, I remember I had my child, and then within less than 24 hours, I was still on whatever meds, give you pain meds, and I had to negotiate the LPA, and I was on the phone with my lawyer. I was like, what is going on? I'm so exhausted and all the things, but I had a very supportive LP. I had great lawyers that kind of helped me through that. And I also had a great team. My former let me have in office. My former fund let me keep my office, and I was able to have office space because I had no money. They kept me on there as a venture partner so that I can continue to, manage whatever portfolio I had. And so I had a lot of support. And then I have a great family. I have an amazing family that helps me and with my children, or with my child at the time. And then for fund two, I got pregnant again, and my had my child. And I remember, so I actually was able to stress test the processes. So I talk about them, right? But we haven't necessarily stress tested them. And for fund two, when I had my child, we actually, um, I wasn't formally off, but for 4 weeks, I was just on email and I did my board meetings, but I wasn't like reviewing new deals and all the things. And I had my analyst just had started, my associate, and then my CFO. And I was so proud of them in that there was decisions that had to need to be made. There was things that had to keep moving. There was LP updates. There was an audit. We ended up doing a new deal, a new follow-on deal, doing our audit, doing our LP updates, and training a new analyst, all while I was basically, on whatever version of maternity leave I was on. And I would just remember coming back, and they had improved our processes. They had done all this stuff. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud and I'm so grateful. Like, this is why we structured this, because with the process, you can train a new employee, exactly what they need to do. They have very set tasks, right? So everyone had their set tasks. And, my associate was able to train my analyst. And then we also knew what needed to get done at the firm because we have done it for the last since the firm started, and there was a very structured process. And so for me, I was just very proud of my team in that. And so yeah, it's a lot of work, and I do have a community support. So I have a group of VC moms here in Chicago where we get together frequently. We share deals, but then we also share car seats and night nurses and how to manage all the things. And you have just, I remember I talked to this very senior VC person that everyone knows. And I remember talking to her, and I was like, having all this mom guilt and all those things. She's like, okay, mom guilt does nobody any good. So, whatever, you have that, but kind of move on, get over that. And second is just like, you need to spend money to make money. And so you need to build basically a community around you. So that means extra support with things that, maybe they clean, somebody can help clean while you do the higher value added things, like, all right, maybe they clean it and help bathe your children, but then you're there for nighttime and you can read the books and you can sleep with them and you can do the playtime. So having to adjust that. And also, one other thing that I learned is I talked to a founder mom, and she had 3 kids, and she was the CEO of a company and fundraising. And I was like, how do you do it? She's like, you just have to be comfortable not being perfect. So sometimes you're going to be a great mom and a bad employee, a bad CEO, a bad GP. Some days you're going to be a great GP, you're going to fundraise, you're going to do all this stuff, and you're going to be not such a great parent. And that's okay. Right? And just being comfortable. You can't have it all. No one has it all. No one's perfect. And, this week, I kind of mentioned to you early on, that my kids had the flu, and my husband was sick, everyone was sick. And like, I was up a few times a day just with coughing and hugs and medicine. And I don't know how myself, and I'm fundraising, all the things like talking to LPs. And so you got to give yourself a little grace. And maybe that's an extra hour of sleep. Maybe that is just, it's not going to be perfect. That call didn't go well, but it's been a rough week, and we'll get back there next week. So I have a great group of community supporters. I have a great family that has come and helped me. So you can't do this alone. And then for me, it's just having empathy with myself, and you're not going to be the best mom and you're not going to be the best GP, but you can figure out ways to manage that. I will say, for me, I say no a lot, and especially for nighttime things, or I like to drop my son off at school. I like to be home for dinner. My mom and dad are now there, and so they make dinner. We'll have dinner as a family. I like to be there for a nighttime routine, kisses and hugs and all the things. And so unless it's something really important, I say no to a lot of that. If it's something at nights and weekends, I say no to that. I do travel a lot. So when I am home, I do want to be present. And so it's just making sure you kind of understand your priorities too, and managing your time around that.
Oh my God, that's amazing. And this is why we had coffee after kid drop off in Chicago.
That's
right?
exactly it.
And
yeah.
I mean, oh my God, I want to be respectful of your time. I could talk to you forever. But I'm going to leave it there, because you nailed, the exact premise of alone together, right? You're definitely alone, but you've built a great, I mean, your child forced the test both professionally and personally that you've built this great network, you've built this great infrastructure, and wow, so inspiring. So thank you so much. I mean, you're out there in a lot of different places. If people want to get a hold of you and learn more about Chingona and yourself, what's the best way you would want them to get in touch with you?
So Chingona Ventures, you can find out what we do, our team, our entire process, founders, especially, we are actively investing in companies. We have our entire process there, like we talked about. We have our criteria. So please let us know what you're working on. We'd love to be, a small piece of you growing your business and love to partner. So please reach out there.
Oh my God. Thank you. Yeah, please do. I look forward to seeing you in person, maybe seeing another cap table.
Yes.
And I'm so proud of the 2 deals we've done together, Viva and Papaya. But
Papaya.
We'll do.
Yeah. We'll do another one.
That's another one. We'll do another one. Thank you again for being here, and I wish you continued success. And I'll come see you in Chicago.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Thanks, everyone. Alone Together and Sidecut Ventures has been made possible by our non-sponsors. That's right, non-sponsors. So here at Sidecut, our motto is, if you want to be a good partner, go first. So we live that every day when we write. We give advice before we write checks, which is how we underwrite deals. So when we find service providers, platforms that support what we're building, we're going to spotlight them. So here we go. The first non-sponsor is Reitler. They're real MVPs to help bring Sidecut to life. They're our law firm. I've known Ed Reitler for over a decade, from startups I've built to building Sidecut. They just go way beyond the standard box ticking law firm and truly partner with you both personally and professionally. So shout to Reitler. Second, Vector, our fund admin. These folks have handled our onboarding and day-to-day payments with ease. It's been a masterclass in smooth operations and friendly service. So we're so excited to be part of the Vector family. Our partner, Mercury. As a recovering banker myself, their digital platform has been seamless. It's really built with the VC community in mind. They even offer a bonus if you sign up and make your first deposit. You'll find the links there, but really great people and a great digital experience. And last is Citizen M, Citizen M Hotels. It's where Chad and I, my associate, co-work. Usually you'll find us in New York at the Times Square location, sometimes downtown at the Bowery. Super cool place, event spaces, cool rooms, and incredibly affordable memberships with the Citizen M Plus membership to just work there as an alternative to some of the co-working spaces, which are a bit more expensive. So just like we offer support before we write checks, we're shouting out partners that have done the same for us. So if you're interested in connecting with any of them, our non-sponsors, please check the show description below for links and details. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for more insights in the world of solo GPs.